This third webinar would be on the future of innovation, innovators and futurists. And we have a very respectable, honorable guest, Professor Ashok from the US. And with NanoSmart, we have been involved with innovation over a year now. We had a session at in Abu Dhabi during the NanoSmart Middle East. That's where we had Professor Ashok was there as well. He was a plenary speaker. And there was a session that was, we had a special session on innovation there. And there's a lot of interest. There were scientists from all different parts of the world. And that actually led to these webinars. And the plan was that we will have another get together, another bigger symposium at the in Manchester next month as part of the 14th NanoSmart conference. But unfortunately, due to the COVID-19, that conference has been postponed. And that's led us to do these webinars on Zoom. So yes, that's a bit of a background. And we have the format would be that Mikael, I'm going to hand over to Mikael, who is going to say some of his introductory remarks. And then he will introduce our guest keynote speaker, Professor Ashok. And then we will have, once Professor Ashok is finished, then we will have some time for discussions, and you can maybe type your questions if you would like to, or if it's, you could maybe unmute and ask the question, and we'll have a discussion. So the aim is to have this webinar for about an hour. Hopefully we could go a bit longer depending on what the interest of there's interesting questions. So yes, I'm going to pass over to Mikael now. And,
okay. Yes, sorry. I have some problem with the live stream. Can you hear me?
Is it working now on Facebook?
I have some problems with the...
Maybe if you can make me the co-host, I will try to while you speak. Eh?
Yeah, that is good.
Okay, you can do that.
So...
Is it recording? You're recording this, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just make me the and you can carry, and I'll try to do this now.
Yes, now you're co-host. So yes, so now we have some background, and I came into contact with the NanoSmart community a year ago, actually, when I was at Nano Energy conference in Malaysia, and then I enjoyed the exchange at the conference, like we usually do when we have presentations, and then we discuss in between sessions and so on. And then also when it was time for the one in Abu Dhabi, which was in December, then we proposed that maybe we have this exchange as a session just to get the discussion on innovation, because it is quite difficult to, if you want to do research innovation and then commercialize it, it's a long road, and especially when we are in the materials field. So then we started to think about how can we share experiences in these ways, so we learn from each other. We don't need to know about patenting and all those things, which are, you have the support organizations at your universities and other places. Usually there is someone there, but no one knows exactly how one should commercialize something and use the innovation. But then you can have tips and tricks and advices from friends, and then you can use some of those, maybe or not. So this webinar is about sharing experience from different points of view. And like we are now very international, so we have South Africa and different countries, then it's different for different ones. But we can, at the end, many of these innovations will be international. And today we have a distinguished guest from US, so Professor Dr. Ashok Vaseashta, who will now give his experiences. And I was happy to meet him in December, and because he has so much experience And I will now read some of his bio for you. So please bear with me because it's a very impressive experience and bio. So Professor Dr. Ashok Vaseashta is currently Chief Research Officer, Executive Director of Research and Chair of Institution Review Board and Office of the Research Integrity at NGCU, State University of New Jersey. And concurrently, he serves as Chair Professor of Nanotechnology at the Academy of Sciences in Moldova, and academician at Euro-Mediterranean Academy of Arts and Sciences, and Senior Strategic Research Advisor for several organizations, and professor at the Riga Technical University and Transylvania University of Brasov. So it's a very international affiliations. And also, inspired by nature and guided by societal necessities, he strives for innovations to address global challenges such as environment, human safety, security, and sustainability, using advanced technological solution platforms. He is a scholar, dedicated futurist, and a leader who provides strategic leadership to promote and advance research initiatives and priorities using data-driven decisions. And he has his PhD from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University in 1990, followed by Kobe postdoctoral fellowship. And he served as professor and researcher at Virginia Tech and Marshall University, and served as director of research at the Institute for Advanced Sciences, Convergence, and International Clean Water Institute for Norwich University Applied Research Institute. And prior to his current position, he was a vice provost for research at the Molecular Science Research Center in South Carolina, in Orangeburg. And he has also been visiting professor at the Free SAE Research Center, University of Bucharest in Romania, and visiting science at the Helen and Martin Kimmel Center of Nanoscale Science at the Weizmann Institute of Science, Israel. He served the US Department of State in 2 rotations as Strategic Science and Technology Advisor and US diplomat. His research interests span from nanotechnology, environmental and ecological science, and safety and security. His research on nanotechnology has been on improving the understanding, design, and performance of nanofibers and sensors detectors, mainly for applications such as wearable electronics, target drug delivery, detection of biomarkers, and toxicity of nano and xenobiotic materials. In the security area, he has worked on counter-terrorism, countering unconventional warfare and hybrid threats, critical infrastructure protection, biosecurity, dual-use research concerns, and mitigated hybrid threats, including fake news. In addition, he has made numerous contributions in environmental ecological science, including directing research for International Clean Water Institute pollution monitoring, contamination and remediation, and sustainability through green nanotechnology. He has authored over 250 research publications, edited or authored 8 books on nanotechnology, and presented many keynotes and invited lectures worldwide, one of which was in Abu Dhabi. He serves on the editorial board of several highly reputed international journals. He is an active member of several national and international professional organizations. He's a fellow of the American Physical Society, Institute of Nanotechnology, and the New York Academy of Sciences. And he has earned several other fellowships and awards for his service, including 2004, 2005, the Distinguished Artist and Scholar Award. So as you now heard and understand, we have a distinguished guest with so many different experiences who will share his vision and thinkings and ideas on the future, how we can try to understand this more, because it's a unknown road ahead, and then we learn from each other. So now we will have first introduction from Professor Ashok. And then later on, we will have a question and answer. There will be a discussion, and then we have a question and answer. So please prepare questions about his, but also related to your topics, because it's important that we have a exchange in the community here. So that was my introduction. I think it's, did I miss something, Nazar? Or we go to the speaker? So Professor Ashok, please.
Okay. Michael, thank you so much for such a kind introduction. Very nice of you to highlight several of my work. I've been researching for over 40 years now, and so spent a lot of time, and I really appreciate your acknowledgement of the work which has been done. And this has not been possible without the help of students. And for that reason, I really appreciate Nasser. And for that reason, I really appreciate Nasser for taking the initiative to initiate this young society for young students, because end of the day, I think eventually we have to transfer knowledge to them. These are the people, those who are going to carry forward this research, and we can share our experience, we can give them knowledge, but these are the basic infrastructure or the pillars of society going forward. So Nasser, I congratulate you. I really appreciate your effort which you're doing to promote young students and encouraging them into going forward. With that, I've been associated with NanoSmat for quite some time. I have attended meetings in Spain, in Czech Republic, Abu Dhabi, and so forth. So it's a wonderful that this event is conducted to promote knowledge of one of the field such as nanotechnology. So with that, let me give a very brief introduction of some of the concepts which I would like to introduce today. And then we will open the floor for discussion. You know, as Michael mentioned, that I'm Ashok Vaseashta, and what we are discussing today is the future of innovation, innovators, and futurists. In addition to the position which Michael described for me as a researcher and professor, he also mentioned I serve as a strategic advisor for developing technology assessment, roadmap, and foresight. This is to identify strength, gaps, and innovation capacity. And that's essentially what we are talking about. Just as a recap, innovation typically refers to designing something new or change applied to an existing concept. And this And this is what holds the key to solving many of the world's most pressing social and societal challenges. And Michael pointed some of them out, and I'm going to also list a few of them which I have worked and continue to work on. Innovation capacity, it measures the level of invention and potential for innovation. And I again congratulate Michael to work on this issue because of the fact all this knowledge which we are generating through our own strength and with the help of students, we have to develop potential for innovation going forward. These are all interlinked value-adding activities that convert input into outputs, which in turn add to the bottom line and help create competitive advantage. With all the technology, with all the data available to us today, all of us have to create a competitive advantage going forward. We have to utilize things in fashion that, of course, the wastage is less, and that's what also creates green energy going forward. Basic components for innovation capacity are concept, framework or method, a model, and real-world data. And some of the areas in which I have worked myself are, one of them is nanotechnology, which obviously goes hand in hand with Nanosmart's um, uh, outlook. Due to dimensionality of these material, they offer tunable properties based on their dimension. Also, since the dimensions are comparable to fundamental physical quantities, it allows material by design. And what that means is that if you have a property in mind, you can design a material. And I'm going to a little bit later on discuss a materials genome project by way of innovation capacity, which is essentially designing material of your own liking. And this is all to create innovation due to ability of functionalization of these nanomaterials being biocompatible and also size compatible with biological sciences. It serves as the main driver for innovation. In addition, I have worked on water, which all of us know is essential for survival. It's interesting that I wrote a manuscript just a couple of days ago on water quality. Again, it's not related right now, but I still wanted to point this out, that water quality still remains an elusive term. Different countries have different definition of water quality. Our body composition is pretty much the same, but still we use different definition of water quality. So I wrote a review paper on water quality, indicating that there should be a universal water quality index going forward. I also worked on and continue to work on cyber physical system. These are unmanned aerial vehicles with surveillance platforms. And obviously that creates connectivity. And one example is right now, all of us being in different areas of the world, we are all connected together for a common cause. For government, I've worked on security, such as cybersecurity, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear types of detection, including information and misinformation. Just like Michael had mentioned, fake news, that's misinformation. So we try to distinguish through data analytics information versus misinformation. So these are some of the areas I had worked on. And now I'm going to describe two activities. One activity which we had worked for, which government funded for us, was called Advanced Sciences Convergence. And what that simply means is that it simply breaks the silos approach to reach across the discipline. Science convergence simply refers to strategic and synergistic coalescence of multiple disciplines that create a unified system to solve intractable problems. It provides new capabilities to understand our natural world, human society, and scientific research as closely coupled, complex, and hierarchical system. The way we had done was to develop certain mechanisms for monitoring, identification, and surveillance of novel, multidisciplinary scientific and technological advances to break through the existing solution paradigm. Once we can continue to monitor all those, based on that, we can then determine as to what new solution exists. That was to understand far-reaching, visionary, yet undefined, and an achievable outcome that can be described in terms of desired action or qualities of the eventual systems. And an example of that was working on something called NBIC, nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, and cognitive sciences. So that was called NBIC Convergence. And as Michael mentioned in his introduction, the government funded for us an Institute of Advanced Sciences Convergence, which was again an innovation capacity building mechanism using convergence of multiple fields. Using this, we recommended different types of chemical and biological sensors for the government. We also developed information and communication technology devices, smart and connected systems, biomedical applications such as tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, gene editing, etc., biomimetics, water contamination detection and remediation mechanisms, advanced manufacturing such as 3D and 4D functionalities, and sentient machines, quantum consciousness. These are the materials which learn by nature, and as a function of time, they continue to adapt to nature. Of memory devices is one example of that. In addition, the convergence methodology allowed us to develop 3 predictive intelligence tools which roadmap a desired outcome for us. Road mapping, as you know, is a methodology that all futurists use to foresight pathways for a desired outcome. So we developed 3 tools. One is called TechForm, which is Technology Foresight Assessment and Road Mapping. The second was Automated Data Mining Services. And the third was New and Emerging Science and Technology Trends. And using these tools, they capture all the information and then give us a roadmap for anything which we are looking for. And they were very interesting tools in terms of technology assessment, especially for the government, because as you know, the government received multiple proposals for innovation. And sometimes because of the limited funding, you have to fund only a selected one. So these tools would advise them as to how to best match the resources with the potential outcome. The second activity is called Convergence Accelerator. And I know I have a presentation in Manchester on the Convergence Accelerator, which is a community-based knowledge infrastructure to accelerate discovery and innovation. National Science Foundation within the United States, and this allows collaboration throughout the world. And maybe we can perhaps initiate that as a question as to what we can do collectively. This is a program to accelerate user-inspired convergence research in areas of national and international research via partnerships between academic and non-academic stakeholders. The effort provides a platform for convergence-based research and advances ideas from concept to deliverables. And I'm going to give you very quickly 3 examples before we open the floor for discussion. One concept which they are currently working on is discovery to market in less than half of the time and half of the cost. These are rapid prototype development activities. The second, which I'm personally working, is for COVID-19, wide spectrum bioinformatics and streaming analytic tool to mitigate future pandemics. And this is an activity which I'm working on with several colleagues to learn the lesson from COVID-19, how it impacted, what we can do collectively going forward. So in future, if there is a pandemic of this magnitude, what we can do based on the lessons learned so that our society does not shut down. I have not been on travel since March, which is very unusual. So, and I'm sure it goes for others. So we don't get into this situation forward. So this is essentially what we are trying to learn from this activity. And of course, International Clean Water Institute, which is convergence of multiple parameters, partners and stakeholders to learn how we can have clean water for all of us, which is a fundamental necessity, and working with several people to make sure that clean water becomes almost like a healthcare type of activity, that it's a must for all of us to have. Critical component of Convergence Accelerator being discovery, development, property optimization, system design and integration, and certification, in addition to manufacturing and development and sustainment. Materials Genome Project, which I very briefly mentioned, and I'm going to just read a couple of things. After that, we will open for discussion. This is a project which is designing materials to revolutionize and engineer our future. This is essentially a database based on modular, extensible, high throughput ab initio tools based on their critical property and material design. All of us collectively can work on this database, add to the properties in this database so that all of us can continue to use this as a materials genome project going forward. So I think I've taken more time than I wanted to. So with that, I'll turn the floor back to Nasser and Mikael to solicit questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashok, for a very interesting your account on innovation and on what you're involved with. Very, very interesting to know what you and the areas that you've highlighted. And I'm sure people will have questions that they would like to ask. Mikael, shall we ask people to type the question or unmute? And
I think both are fine if you want to type, but if you want to ask directly, just unmute your microphone.
Do we have anyone who would like? Maybe you could electronically raise your hands if you have a question, and we can select, and then you can unmute, or you could just unmute your mic but one at a time. Professor Ahmed, maybe you can start off. Yes, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed your talk. I just want to ask about developing a culture of innovation. I'll just give you an example. One of my friends, he has a son who went to Imperial College to do a master's in entrepreneurship, and on his course there was also another colleague, and both of these boys were doing the same course, and they developed two apps. One was Dads Away from Home Reading to Their Children, which is featured by Apple. The chief executive actually spoke about that in one of his addresses. And the other one was a security app, which they both developed. So one person worked for the BBC developing apps and tried to raise funding in the UK. The other person went to New York and raised lots of funding for his app. And one person couldn't really get his business going, and the other's business was worth around about 600 million. And he ended up hiring his friend to go to the States to work together on the security app. So how important do you think this culture of innovation is in societies, like the mindset and the culture, in addition to the technology?
Mikael, you want to take that?
Hello? Did you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to punt it to Mikael.
Okay. Yeah.
Start. Okay.
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah.
What I think about that is that because one never knows how the business will. There is no recipe and so on. So it's dependent on the hard work. You have the knowledge, but then also there is the luck. And luck comes from the hard work, so it increases chance. And actually, this to network with people and finding the right matching with someone who wants to pay for this. This is a part of the thing. Why it can be a successful business in one case and unsuccessful in other case, even though the teams are very similarly skilled and good. So I think this having this type of interactions in some way is part of the creating opportunities. And then at some point it can be like a ketchup effect, and then you have the 600 million case if you just find the right matching and solve the bottleneck, whatever it is, and so on. And then I think it's having the perspective that Professor Ashok was presenting here, that because he was presenting many things which are on the big levels and so on, and we are doing sometimes the small things, but we should understand that we are part of something big. And if we can find where it matches, it becomes very valuable. So that is my point on that, those different cases.
Yeah, I agree that lots of things, they are part of a big puzzle. Working on individual solutions and adding on to the bigger picture, I think helps. But as you mentioned, that sometimes it's simply a luck, which in my opinion is a high probability event to perhaps add on or contribute to a successful idea. All of that comes with the hard work. As much as I may or may not believe in luck, but I do believe in hard work because it eventually pays. As I mentioned, that it adds value to the overall scenario. And just like Professor Ahmed mentioned that, if an app takes effect, if it has applicability towards a larger audience, it catches on. But again, hard work is the key to anything what we do.
Can I just follow on? You mentioned, obviously, you praised quite rightly all the students that have done the work, in your research group and everything. And a lot of sort of talented people in many different fields, they start very, very young. So the sort of genius musicians, the genius golfers, they started off very, very small. What do you think we can teach? How do you think we can ingrain innovation with small children early on so that we get bigger benefits in the future?
Nasser, you want to take that?
Yeah, no, I was mentioning that I think in some parts of the world, in some countries, there is more of an innovation culture. For example, like in the States, it's taught more, about creativity, innovation, while in the UK and Europe, it's not that much, it's not taught. So it's not, and young people are not. And this is one of the reasons why I've been involved in, one, setting this Young Professional Society up, and secondly, even from a nanosmart point of view, to see if we can bring this thing in, innovation featured into nanosmart, because over the years since we've been working on nanosmart and trying to bring scientists together, we bring people from different parts of the world and a lot of the youngsters as well. So the idea was that this thing, we started in as a special session in Abu Dhabi, and was going to sort of grow, will continue to grow, where more youngsters will be sort of getting involved and knowing more about and meeting more people, innovators, and hopefully that we will create more awareness. But yes, it's very, very important that the youngsters need to be told about innovation at an early age. And the society is one of the areas is innovation. The other two are communication and leadership. So yes, it's a very, very important. Maybe Mikael can add something to that too.
Yeah, I can add another example. You were mentioning the music business and musicians and so on. And if you look into many of the successful groups, when they started, they went and played at very small clubs for no money. They had nowhere to sleep, and it was many years of experience under bad conditions. Basically, they had no money, but they did what they liked to do over a long time, and then for some of them it became a success, and then they became big, and some of them did not work out. But most of the bands, they have been struggling many years just to get the band chemistry working out and building a reputation. And now you have some possibilities over internet and so on, but still touring is the big thing to get to close to their customers, who are the fans who wants to listen to the music and experience it with the band. So already there you have the hard-working mentality thing, and they follow what they like. So it's similar with innovation, in my opinion, that if you like something, to do something, then you work hard with those things. You should not work hard with these things to become rich or something, because you will not be rich probably. But if you do things you like, you will be rich on experiences, and then actually the chances that you become rich in money is also higher, because when you do things you like, you're always thinking about it, also when you sleep and do gardening and so on, and then maybe you find this key to the 600 million case or something like that. So that's an example from the music business to this. And for young people, that is maybe a comparison.
Okay, let's take some questions from.
I have a question.
Philip. Yes, please. If you can unmute.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to thank Prof. Ashok for his topic, and I thank him so much. I am Philip Bele, and I'm a PhD student enrolled at the University of Douala here. I'm working on green nanotechnology with application in biomedical area. I want to ask if, knowing very well that nowadays nanotechnology is a rapidly growing technology with potential application in many sectors. And since Africa is full of resources that clearly highlights the areas offering promising possibilities for industries to boost their growth, I don't know or which kind of advice Professor Ashok can give to me, who is working on green nanotechnology using plant extract to generate metallic nanoparticle and to treat several diseases, including the COVID-19. Because recently I ran an experiment in my lab here with medicinal plants, because I use medicinal plants to generate those nanomaterial, and I had to give this to rats, and it seems to work. But the policy of my country and the ethics, I couldn't go ahead. So I want to know which kind of advice Professor Ashok can give to me. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a wonderful question, although the sound was breaking up. So, but anyway, I think you and I could perhaps discuss all day, and that would be insufficient for response. But green technology or green nanotechnology, I think this is a wonderful area. And I'll give you a few examples, and then maybe we can have a discussion. First of all, in the research which I work, we try to use materials which are biocompatible, and of course, they do not degrade the environment. And also the product which we developed were environmental friendly. So it was on both aspects. Just to give you a little bit background, I started my background when I was doing my first PhD. The first one was on integrated circuit fabrication. And we had used lots of trichloroethylene, lots of acetone, which I felt right from the very beginning that they were detrimental to health. So since then, of course, I've worked for almost 10 years nonstop in IC laboratory, working with all types of chemicals which were extremely poisonous and also not environmentally friendly. Since then, my motivation was to continue to work on materials, chemicals, which are environmentally friendly. So that was one of the application now, or motivation. Now, going into biomedical types of application, some of the work which we have done is on nanofibers using electrospinning processes. These are biodegradable, and we added different types of pharmaceutical product. One classical example is for abdominal adhesion sutures, which you don't need to take out. You could perhaps leave within the body, and they degrade as a function of time. And that itself produces least amount of biological waste, and of course is environmentally friendly. We also worked on the sugarcane peels. After sugarcane, once you take the juice out, you take the sugarcane and then draw nanoparticles out of it and embedded them into nanofibers for making composites which are less in weight. And of course, if they are less in weight, that obviously means that the anything that would be used to lift them would be obviously utilize less energy. So they are environmentally friendly. They consume less energy in production or less energy in carrying and so forth. So again, as I mentioned, I can go into several of these applications and perhaps you and I can exchange email where I can give you lots and lots of these ideas where you could use nanomaterials for applications which are friendly to the environment and also have better characteristics. Just one quick example is the liner which we use for trash. We started making liners for the trash which are biocompatible or biodegradable, meaning thereby once they go into the environment, they do not create so much of plastic. We are also working on plastic bottles which are biodegradable and also environmentally friendly. So one can think of thousands of applications, but I think that's a very good field to work on, and I encourage you to explore as much as possible in that field.
Okay, thank you. Professor Ashok, okay, so we had Philippe, who was a PhD student, but so what about some people who will be watching this webinar, the recordings, and they are thinking to go on to do PhDs? Obviously, it's important what research field they go into. What would you say, what research field would be worth sort of looking into, and if they can innovate and for example, you may nanotechnology, energy, medical, biomedical. You mentioned water research on water as well. What would you suggest to go into the right type of field?
The fields. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were saying something.
No, it's okay. Yes, please
Okay.
continue.
So water definitely is essential for all of us. I think in terms of water research, finding filtration mechanism. Water, as you know, contains, especially these days, contains lots of pharmaceutical. We contain new chemicals which did not exist a long time before. In terms of plastic, I have two presentations in a few days on microplastic. We discovered that plastic in water attracts more bacteria than any other material. And once you have bacteria, it does not get filtered. It recycles back into a water stream. Also, the plastic in water has estrogen types of characteristics, which obviously is detrimental, especially to men. So using nanomaterials, developing different types of filtration mechanism, I think this is one area which I would encourage as many students as possible. And of course, I think you saw my colleague in Turkey. Of course, I have access to lots of our students, so we collectively work on that. And that also ties to Professor Ahmed's question. Every place I have engagement, such as in Riga, such as in Brasov, my condition of joining that institution as a visiting professor is if I can have access to the student so that we can collectively work on ideas. Now, going back to the question which Nasser and Philip had asked, cyber physical systems, because of the high level of interconnectivity, I think this is one field where we can perhaps expand our research. This allows unlimited resources in terms of materials development and characterization. Sitting here at my home, I can work with my colleague in Turkey and also in Riga, and whatever facility they have in their lab, I can give them ideas. I could perhaps purchase chemicals for them, and they would do in their lab. I can, just looking through interactive video, I could advise them, let's do this characterization. And once we have the result, we can discuss collectively. So cyber physical system, one can think of thousands of applications because of the interconnectivity, because of the data analytics. And that's the reason I mentioned streaming analytics, meaning thereby you analyze in real time, creating a surveillance platform. And this is what we use for measuring contaminants by aerial surveillance vehicles. So sitting at home, I can look at the surface water characteristics at different areas. So this is one area which I would encourage as many students to work on. Nanotechnology definitely has unlimited potential. And from that comes the Materials Genome Project. As we continue to add data to that platform, we have MSDS, and I'm sure all of you know, Material Safety Data Sheet, but the Nanomaterial Safety Data Sheet does not exist. Only for limited nanomaterials, we have access to safety data sheet, and that is one field which is completely nascent, at least at this point. Security aspect in terms of cyber, in terms of different types of chemical and biological agents as they continue to add on. And of course, in terms of security, information versus misinformation, so that what we learn from information is the right thing. And we should be able to, using data analytics, distinguish between information and misinformation so that we can guide others in the right direction based on, or at least teach them how to isolate information versus misinformation. So these are some of the fields. Of course, there are many more, but these are something which I'm personally engaged in.
Okay. Do we have anyone else who wants to ask a question? Or
I can add on just a comment to Philip's question here, because he was mentioning that there were some limitations by politicians and so on. Because now we are thinking about our research and the particular thing we are doing with some nanoparticles, something, and then it should be like for a technology aim in a system and so on. So that's our conventional thinking. But sometimes if we can motivate this, what we are doing here, in my case, for example, if I can motivate that this is very valuable because it has use for others in our region, then the politicians, they can see the value of this value chain in our region. So then if one can motivate such things to politicians, because this is another language talking with the political people or such organizations when we're researchers. But if we can think that to present it like that, then maybe they will understand and say, oh, now I understand. This is very good for the region. I would support you. So this is not very traditional for PhD students to think about how does my research fit into the regional development, because we are thinking value chain or this technology is useful. But having that type of interaction is also useful for motivating progress regionally and with politicians and so on.
Michael, that's a very good point which you mentioned, and somehow I omitted responding because you get carried away with some of the technology. But the point which you mentioned is valid, because scientists and politicians, they work on two different time scales. So keeping them engaged, keeping them aware, making sure that we are communicating, I think that's an essential component. Part of the work, working for the State Department as a strategic advisor. Of course, I had that capability. Lots of PhD students may not have that capability, but creating that interaction with the politicians or the lawmakers, those who have resources, capabilities, I think that helps a lot. And it's not easy thing to convince a politician, but the timescales are so different that by the time the technology advances much quickly, and the laws, it takes years before they catch up with the technology.
Yes, and I have another experience because usually we are thinking of politicians who are on the power now, but 3 years from later, they will not be in power. So it's also good, important to discuss with all politicians because they will change and there will be new people. So you do this thing. You don't need to spend a lot of time on it just for this, but little by little and over time, it will be, they will understand these things.
Right.
Okay. Do we have other questions? Anyone wants to just unmute your mic and ask a question? I believe somebody has typed a question here. Probably this is for Ashok. Maybe a specific question. Are you using metal oxide nanoparticles such as zirconium dioxide in photocatalysis for water treatment?
Yes. Yes, we are using nano photocatalysis for degrading microplastics in water. It's still in very early stages, but we have seen using metal oxide, using nano photocatalysis, that the plastic degrades much faster than any other mechanism, especially 100 microns or less. We are able to degrade it much quicker. And that's a wonderful experiment to conduct, especially nanophotocatalysis using the UV spectrum light and also the metal oxides. So yeah, that's a wonderful field. And we have tried some initial experiment and they were successful.
Yeah, another sort of question, maybe I could put to all, Professor Ahmed, Ashok, and Mikael as well. Now in this COVID-19 era, where the whole world has been in lockdown and affected by this coronavirus, now obviously people, the world, we're moving on, we're looking at different ways of working, but how do we continue with research and move forward with innovation? What would you say? Where we're confined in our own homes, or maybe it's not like it used to be before. How do we move forward and continue with the technology and carry on with the innovation?
Michael had his hands up.
Michael, yeah?
It was Professor Vakar had to leave, so I was waving goodbye.
Oh, okay.
But I think we had a good example just when you answered the question and what we are doing here, because we need to move on with these things. And doing small steps is always useful, and sharing information. So we are, like, you answered your question and then you responded with what you're doing. So you were not hiding any information just for your own purpose, because we need to share information and so others can use it. And then when we have platforms like this, here's a webinar, so it's online and we don't need to travel. So it's very efficient sharing of different things when we are now we're spreading a little bit on the different questions and so on, but it can also be more specific topics in some cases if you have these things. And that's why I think this like online conferences or sessions or symposiums will be valuable for actually moving ahead, because this is something COVID-19 has learned us to communicate more online with video. So even I have learned some of the technical things, having meetings on this platform, and when you have sometimes meeting in Asia, they don't have the same type of Zoom and so on. So I have been using some for China, and in India I use another one, but they are similar. But then we lower the barrier of using this, which means that we can have more meetings, more flexible, either as conferences, online and so on, or more frequent meetings to discuss the collaborations. because then we move ahead. So I think that is something which we have learned from this
Obviously,
period.
it stops, the COVID-19 stops people, like Ashok was mentioned, he's not traveled since March, yeah? So it may be a bit of a problem where people want to collaborate with different labs and traveling and going and doing some experimental work and that, but, maybe the groups need to be
Yes.
working, on an individual and then communicating using this technology
Yes.
to...
So I think this setup which Ashok was presenting is that, like, we are now experienced, we are no longer in the lab. So it's the young people who are focused in the lab and they spend time. But we have the possibility to have broader, see broader perspective and give advices from other types of thinking. So actually that someone in the world, they do the lab stuff and there are results and then we discuss them. Then we can still have feel that this is a joint activity. Sometimes people are talking about clusters. You need to be in the same place to meet and create synergies. But I think we can have clustering dynamics. Once we share things, we can have the cluster effect without actually being at the same place. And this is what I think Professor Ashok is very good at, because he's at different places. Normally, you don't have time to travel to all those places very frequently. But having this type of meeting and giving advices over the various platforms, could be phone to video and so on, then you can actually do more things. And his experience can advise the young people, and then they work again in that local place.
There's another question for Ashok, someone's typed in. According to you, Professor Ashok, how can green technology be efficiently used during this pandemic crisis?
Great. Okay. Let me come to this question, but just add to the previous discussion and what both of you mentioned, Nasser and Michael. Data sharing is essential during this COVID-19. Only yesterday, we sort of finalized initial draft of our COVID-19 lesson learned, future plans, all that type of a thing. Collectively, there are roughly about 35 authors. So we are all sharing data, sharing our experiences, sharing information as to, and from some of the countries, not all data is coming through. So these are the people, those who are on the ground. They know exactly what's going on. They are sending pictures, they're sending data, and I can gather all this information and put that into a publication format so that it sort of gives a true on-the-ground type of picture. So data sharing is important. It may not be using all the platforms, just like Michael mentioned, that sometimes there may be technology limitation simply by email communication. As long as there is a willingness to share data, all of us are working for a common cause. I think people always find ways to contribute. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this and see how it looks. In fact, I had asked one of the federal agencies to see if they would fund for me a meeting of minds so that we can discuss our finding in a technology platform and share with as many people, those who want to join, about our understanding of COVID-19 and any plan which we had developed as to how to mitigate such type of pandemic going forward. And they can add to that. We may not have all the answers. By having willingness to share data, I think we can all help mitigate this type of a situation going forward. So coming back to Philip's question, the green nanotechnology, especially in this environment, is by having connection. As I mentioned, I work with several colleagues of mine in Turkey, where I have access to students and their laboratory. Using different types of platform, I can guide them as to what they should be doing. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the examples which we are working on, embedding turmeric, which I'm sure all of us know that we use in our food product. It has wonderful antiseptic, antibiotic types of characteristics. So we are embedding turmeric into different types of fibers and using them as patch, as a Band-Aid, for example, and also for different types of biomedical types of application. And then again, as mentioned, I could from here communicate with the student, watch their experiment. If the laboratories are allowing the students to go to their institution, and even guide them through the characterization from my home by looking at their apparatus. So this allows interaction in this environment where we are not allowed to travel, where we are not allowed to go through the airport, but still research can continue on this platform. And the second one, which I mentioned, although there are more examples, but biodegradable plastics for wastage containment, and also capturing pharmaceutical using different types of filtration mechanism. These are all biocompatible, biodegradable fiber products, which as a function of time would degrade, and to byproducts which are environmentally friendly. And also they are used making chemicals which are not, as I mentioned, I used trichloroethylene, diborane, and phosphine. I think Michael could perhaps relate to some of them working on silicon carbide. He may have worked on different types of chemicals, but we don't use them anymore. We are using much friendlier, bio-friendly chemicals for processing all of these materials.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions? I think we have gone over our time. Is there anyone who wants to, the final chance to ask a question or make a suggestion?
I wanted to leave open my email in case any of the participant, or even outside of participation, if they want to communicate electronically, I'll be glad to respond via email. So
Yes.
I think we can put that onto Nanosmat in case people want to contact.
Or you
I'll
could,
be glad to respond.
yeah, sure. Maybe you can type in the chat
Okay.
box your email address, and people
Sure,
can take
okay.
note of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And also we can inform that now we are recording this exchange, so it will be uploaded later on the Nanosmat YouTube channel. So that will be available for those who want to maybe could not participate today,
Okay.
and so on. And then over time it will be exchanged in the community. So this is a good example how to offer to share knowledge and interact together. So this is also what the participants can do in various ways. And if there are like other events where this type of activity can be promoted, feel free to let us know if we can support in some way, because now we have initiated this webinar sharing our type of things, but maybe we can support in other ways also, how to build innovation capacity from the research by this exchange.
Yes, and we do plan to hold these webinars on a monthly basis. So hopefully once a month we will be holding, and hopefully we will try to bring in some different speakers as well. So we'll keep everyone informed about that. And I think we have gone over the time. Maybe Mikael can have some concluding remarks and maybe some take-home messages, and then we can wrap up, if that's okay. With Ashok, if he wants to say anything at the end of.
Yes, I can just summarize a little bit on my, because now Professor Ashok has very much experience from various different disciplines, and what we have been listening to is that how this experience, together with other ones, have accumulated to these bigger perspectives where we have the different disciplines and you can have the governmental people listen to you. So that's a reminder that what we are doing will evolve to such things at some time. We are part of something bigger, and when we can position our things, then we will understand more how we can, and then it will interact much more. So this was an example of how it can turn into. And in many cases, I think that it's very good that, for example, if one has been or is visiting other groups for shorter or longer time, you get some experience and ideas which you bring home. Not being at one place only, then you are focused, but you get so many other ideas from the other disciplines and meeting other people. So it's good to be visiting other places also, and if possible to be a visiting researcher for a period and having that type of exchange. So today we have had a good example of that, I think.
I completely agree. I think as a take-home message, as Nasser also mentioned, convergence and collaboration. I think these are two take-home messages from my side. Continue to think using convergence of activities. This is no longer a time where we could be siloed in a laboratory or in a field. I worked in an environment a long time ago where all professors had their individual kingdom. They would not share their equipment with the others. We don't live in that environment. We have to collaborate. We have to look at the convergence of field. As I mentioned, if a colleague of mine has a laboratory facility, I have access to it sitting from my home because I can devise an experiment for him, saying that please try this experiment for me, and collectively using that idea, we can create something new. And I think this is environment which will develop innovation capacity going forward. So as I mentioned, these are my two take-home messages, collaboration and convergence. And I think that would lead to lots of innovation and innovation capacity. And I really appreciate all people joining from all over the world. Thanks to Nasser for organizing. Thanks to Mikael for coordinating this wonderful activity. And I'm really glad to be working with both of you to participate in this activity. Really appreciate the invitation. And thank you so very much for this kind words which you mentioned for me.
Ashok, I think we have one question from our female member who joined this meeting, asking why the profession of futurist is dominated by males.
Well, actually, it should not be. I think that's a wonderful question. And it had come up before. Actually, I think females are better futurists. They can read mind better than men can, right? My wife tells me all the time, anytime I would say something, she said, I already know that's what you were going to say. So I think females are better futurists than men. Maybe it's just the fact they may have published more publication, but I have seen a futurist. I belong to a World Future Society. All the people, those who coordinate activities, all of them are females. So, but they invite lots of men to give presentation. So it's maybe just a visibility, but I don't think there is any gender preference to this topic. But as I mentioned, this is my personal opinion that females are actually better mind reader or better futurists than some of the men are, because men by nature, they focus on something. While female, they look at multiple things at the same time. They are good multitaskers, and I think that gives them an ability to consider various fields at the same time.
And also, you know, they say that Google must be a female because before you start to type, it already knows.
Knows what you're saying.
Yeah.
Could be.
But also
maybe,
to this question, maybe because maybe we have a better situation today and so on, and what we see is a little bit slow dynamics, because from the traditional roles more 40 years ago, they don't just change overnight, but because there are these at the universities that you have try to have the equal and so on. So it's a very slow change process dynamics. We just don't see it as much today. Right. But certainly when we're working on different things, everyone has their different skill independent of gender or where they are from and so on. So it's just to find the right team, whatever you're doing, and then it will be fine in different ways. Nothing will be perfect, but when it's good enough, then we manage to do things.
True.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. So we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar, hopefully next month. So we'll keep you all informed. And once again, thank you very much for Professor Ashok for his time. And it's a very interesting talk. I'm sure a lot of people will have found this very beneficial. And as Professor Ashok has given his email in the chat box, if there are any more specific questions or would like to elaborate on some more discussion, then please do feel free to get in contact with Professor Ashok, and I'm sure he'll be happy to help out and contribute. Thank you very much. And I think we must end now, or Mikael, if you want to say anything?
No, it's just fine. Just to mention, if you happen to be a social, then the Nanosmat and also the Young Professional Society are on Facebook and also on LinkedIn, those platforms. So future events and so on will be shared there, and there you can also send some questions or ideas and so on, because that is the part of the community. It's not only these webinars, there are different platforms. So feel free to like those pages and so on for the future events.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sure.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay.